Welcome, everyone, to a Friday edition of the Media Row podcast, a late Friday edition. I apologize for just an odd week. I mean, I had no voice on Monday, so we had to skip that show. And then just some interview scheduling conflicts that happened late yesterday, which made it to the point where I wasn't able to get the show out for this morning, but we are getting it out now so that you can listen to it as soon as possible, and also before the big game on Sunday, because to be honest, that is what we're focusing on here today, as this Media Row episode is going to be full Super Bowl coverage. We have Jen Mueller, who is a Seahawks insider. She is a sideline reporter live at the Super Bowl for the Seattle Seahawks radio broadcast. She is joining the show today, and she is going to give us keys for both teams, storylines for both teams, and just some great insight. So can't wait for that. But before we do anything else, need to make sure that you guys click that subscribe button. Helps us tremendously. Follow us all over social media at Media Row Pod. And then, of course, go and support local. And that is the sponsor that makes this happen in Kelly's Little Nipper. 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Great food, great drinks, and better community is what you're going to find over there at Kelly's Little Nipper, a proud sponsor of the Media Row podcast. Without further ado, let's jump into Super Bowl weekend. Welcome now to the program for the first time, definitely won't be the last time, Seahawks insider Jen Mueller. So Jen, thank you so much for doing this for me. I know it was kind of late notice and had to move a couple of schedules around, but it means the world to me that you were able to find time to join me today.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, there's plenty of Seahawks stuff to talk about, so now's a great time to do it.
Yeah, how has it been being live during the week leading up to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, so it's a kind of an interesting setup. The team is in San Jose, so we are very far removed from what's happening on Media Row. So around the team, it really does feel like business as usual. You're just kind of going to work. You have some more media responsibilities for them, but just kind of the mood. It's what Mike McDonald always says. It is loose but focused. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, so I went there 3 straight days where Media Row is set up, and it is a huge spectacle. You can't even imagine how many people are there and the conversations, but it was really fun to bump into a number of former Seahawks. I mean, they would have been there anyway, just kind of doing media stuff, but they are in high demand, of course, with this Super Bowl matchup and getting a chance to relive some of their Super Bowl memories. And there is a definite buzz around San Francisco.
Is there a former Seahawk that you weren't expecting to see that you saw, or a favorite memory from those 3 days?
Oh gosh. I mean, I saw Shelby Harris came up and gave me a hug, Ricardo Lockett, Luke Wilson, Stephen Hauschka was there. It was a number of guys. It was good to say hi to them. It was good to hear what they were up to. And really, when you go to Media Row, it's like seeing old friends, and you do interviews, but you're really just kind of catching up with people that you have encountered over the last, 20 plus years in the business, and just kind of enjoying being in the same place at the same time.
And so let's go back to the NFC Championship. Let's go back a couple of weeks. Just what was that like, being on the field as a sideline reporter, seeing the team rush the field, the fireworks go off? Just what was it like to kind of sit there and see it that close of Seattle's going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's so it was an intense game, and we knew that it was going to be intense. And we start to get under that 4 minute mark, right? And the fourth down pass happens and it's knocked away, and you realize, okay, you got a chance to run out the clock. And we don't start celebrating on the sidelines, but you start kind of projecting forward, and you're like, okay. And you get really excited. And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, I have to go and ask all sorts of questions. I actually cannot get so excited and caught up in this because there's still plenty of work to be done here. So I was among the players storming the field. I think Jalen Milroe picked me up and hugged me. It is really cool when the confetti starts coming out of the cannons, and it was fun to talk to those guys right after. I mean, that's like, as a sideline reporter, those are always the best moments. There, nothing beats a walk off interview. Nothing. But when you've been around guys and you know what it means to them because of their journey or because of the injury that they've overcome, that's where it gets really special. And it's not just a game, and it's not just a win, and it's not just a Super Bowl. And I say that um, the Super Bowl in and of itself should be enough, but there's always another story that goes along with it. And so that's what really makes it meaningful to have those conversations.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Were you with the Seahawks after their first Super Bowl appearance in '05, or were you with them back then too?
So I came on board as their sideline reporter in '09. So this is the
Okay.
third Super Bowl that I have covered. I was around the team in '05, '06, but I was not part of the broadcast team. So
So, being with that team though and seeing that team, just what are the similarities that you see with this 2025-26 squad as similar, different as the previous three Super Bowl teams? What are some characteristics that you notice are the same or different?
well, I would say there is a certain level of intensity and togetherness that every single one of those teams had. There was a lot of camaraderie on all of those teams. I think that that is the similarity where they love their teammates. All of those individual previous Super Bowl teams, they have group chats going. They text each other frequently. They keep in touch. I know that this group is going to do the same. This group is different though. This group um, is not as talkative as the Legion of Boom era. They do it in a different way. The previous two Super Bowl teams, they kind of operated intentionally with a chip on their shoulder, right? And they wanted to prove the doubters wrong. And there was good reason to, right? You
Yeah.
had undrafted free agents that were making some big plays that became some of the biggest stars in the NFL, but this team is different than that. And some of it is you've got veterans like Leonard Williams and Julian Love who are leading the way. You do have some high draft picks by virtue of how the last couple of drafts have gone and some trades that John Schneider has made. So it's not so much that. It's kind of like they're in their own little bubble and they know exactly what they're going to do and what they're capable of. And they really aren't paying attention to anybody else or anything else. They just want to be in their own group. They love being together. They love being with different position groups. Defense loves hanging out with offense, vice versa. It is a uniquely connected group from all the other ones that I have covered.
And how are you seeing that affect the younger guys? Like Eman Worry, it seems like he plays from an outsider's perspective like a fifth year veteran, but he's a rookie. So are you seeing that leadership, that camaraderie affect the younger guys too?
Well, I think Wari has always just fit into this group really well. He is a very mature leader, regardless of how much time he has in the league. That stood out to me from day one. But I do know that the guys kind of pulled him and some of the younger players aside in training camp, and it was specifically the defensive side. It was the guys like Demarcus Law and Leo and Julian who said, "Hey, look, I know you got a lot on your plate, rookies, and I know that you're not going to understand this until you are further into your career. But we know what we have here, and what we have here is something really special. So just know that we're going to give it our all. And I want you to give it your all. And I want you to just hang with us. And I want you to understand how special this opportunity is. Because when you come into the NFL and you win as a rookie, you assume that it's always going to be like that. I've talked to a number of players who have said that. Lofa Tatupu said that. He was part of the 2005 team. There were rookies on that 12 and 13 and 14 team that just assumed that every year you would be going to the playoffs and that you would be a Super Bowl contender. With the benefit of hindsight, that's not how it always works. And so the vets really did bring that up to the young guys. And not that they were afraid they weren't going to work at it, but to truly emphasize this is special. Just trust us on this one. And I think that's part of what you are seeing. That's part of the connectedness. Now, you still have to be willing to do that. And a lot of credit goes to John Schneider and his entire staff for finding the right people to put on this team. But it was communicated early on that this group had the potential to do something pretty incredible.
When did it click for you? Because as a diehard fan, as an outsider, I mean, there were moments in the early part of the season where I was like, this team's really fun to watch. This is a really good team. But it didn't start clicking for me until about late in the season, probably after that Colts game, even, where I'm like, okay, this team could make a run. When did it click for you as someone closer that was saying, okay, this team has something special?
I don't know that there was an actual moment or a game. I think it was, you just start realizing, oh, I haven't talked in a losing locker room in a while. Huh. Like you're so busy on the day to day. And I'll tell you what, it was having games against the Rams and the 49ers late in the season that I never looked ahead to see what was going to happen. Like you knew by the time
That's a
you
good
got to
point.
week 16 with the Thursday night game, and you knew exactly what week 18 meant against the 49ers. And it's not that you didn't think you could win those games, but with those kind of always on the horizon, you're like, man, I like where you are, but you're not really going to know until you get to that week 16 game against the Rams. And I think that was kind of more of my, I am not going to say that it snuck up on me, but in some ways it kind of did. You look back and you're like, yeah, I mean, that is a nice stretch of wins that you have put together. And you just kind of keep looking forward to like, okay, well, what are you going to do next week against the opponent? How do we match up this week? I think that's more of what I was thinking during the course of the season. I never try to look at the schedule and predict outcomes. It's not a fun exercise for me. And I'm not very good at it. Um, so yeah, I think I just kind of took it as the weeks were going on.
So a lot of people have talked about Drake May and just the threat he poses to this really talented defense, especially with his
Mhm.
legs. Just what have you heard from other media members or your interviews with Patriot players? Just what's the threat level of Drake May against the Seahawks defense?
Yeah, it is a legit threat. I mean, he is the best quarterback in a lot of different metrics. And you know, I know that people are going to look at the opponents and they're going to say, yeah, but the Patriots didn't really play a tough schedule. Here's the thing, they couldn't control the schedule. They did exactly what they were supposed to do in beating the opponent that was on the schedule. With Drake May, nobody has more passes, deep explosive passes to the sideline in the NFL than Drake May. I should say that completion percentage wise. The only quarterback who has thrown more passes like that is Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has given the Seahawks all they can handle in those
Yeah.
matchups against the Rams. So that's certainly something that you want to keep an eye out. And when it comes to running, Drake May is really good. And the Seahawks, the one kind of little glitch in this run defense is the quarterbacks that have been able to run, they have been able to pick up some significant yards. Now, some of those yards, you have to take all of it with a grain of salt. Some of those yards have come because the game was a blowout anyway. So you're kind of defending deep. You'll let the quarterback run and scramble and do what they're going to do. But it's legit. Now, I will say the advantage that the Seahawks defense could have is that Drake holds onto the ball longer than many of the quarterbacks that they have faced. He's got a 3.1 second time to throw. That is third slowest in the league. So if you think about facing a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, or you think about Philip Rivers when he played for the Colts. There was no chance for the pass rush to get on those guys because they just got rid of the ball too quickly, like almost a second faster than what Drake May is throwing, at least a half a second faster, right? That makes all the difference in the world for being able to get those guys up front to affect the quarterback and the game. But if you don't get to Drake May and you call a couple of those blitzes or pressures, he is going to find a way to hurt you for sure.
We talk a lot about that defense for Seattle. It kind of got beat up against LA. I mean, the Rams gave them everything they could, and right
Well,
before a Super Bowl matchup. You're coming off of that divisional round game where you just blew out San Francisco. Is it kind of good in a sense to kind of get beat up a little, prove to yourself that you're not unbeatable as that defense right before the Super Bowl?
I don't know if that's how they would say it necessarily. Um, I do think it tested them in good ways. And I do think it tested them and gave them an additional confidence boost that you can throw all of these different things. The Rams used a personnel grouping that they really had not used much all year long. So Seattle's defense has changed it on the fly, especially at halftime. They're really good at halftime adjustments. But I think what you take away from that is you can handle any sort of surprise that gets thrown at you because Mike Vrabel is going to throw a few surprises at you, right? Josh McDaniels is a really good offensive coach. You could expect that there's going to be something. And I think that's probably more of what you take away. You knew that that was going to be a tough battle. And you fought to the very end and you came up with the big plays when you needed it. And, you did what you told people you were going to do. You closed out the conference. So I think that's probably more of what they're taking away from that win.
And then with the offense that Seattle has, I mean, Sam Darnold, arguably the greatest story this season out of anyone in the NFL. Great comeback story. Just what are you seeing from the Patriots defense that could give the Seahawk offense some issues?
They're really good against the run. I mean, they have not allowed an explosive run. I think it's an explosive run. I've got my notes. I've got like 14 pages here of notes. But in the postseason, they have 68 attempts. Opponents have tried to run the ball on it. I'm looking here for numbers. I'm looking for numbers. Just buy me a little time here. And they're not allowing guys to run that ball. They have not allowed an explosive play. They have not allowed a rushing touchdown yet. I mean, that is the strength of their team. And if they make Seattle one dimensional, that's where you run into problems downfield. That's where you start putting the ball into positions where, they could get an interception. That's where Sam's got to be really good and really disciplined about not putting the ball in harm's way. Everybody's going to look at the matchup between Christian Gonzalez and JSN. I love it. I can't wait to see that one. That has been a big topic of conversation. They both came out of the same area of Dallas. They both came out the same year. They never played against each other in high school. They played last year. So the Patriots and the Seahawks played last year, but Christian was shadowing DK Metcalf. And so this will be the first time that he goes one-on-one against JSN, obviously Offensive Player of the Year, as he was just named last night. So I think that's a great matchup. But yeah, you're going to have to figure out how to make sure Ken Walker stays involved, whether it's straight runs or that screen game that's worked really well, because they are pretty stout up front.
How have the injuries looked for both teams? I know earlier this week they brought up Drake May with his shoulder, of course, Eman Mori earlier with his ankle, and then still, I mean, Darnold with the oblique. Just, has there been any resolutions to those injuries, or all three just prepared to play through it? It's the
No,
Super Bowl.
I was going to say, I don't think you're going to find any injuries on game day. I think everybody is going to be available on game day. In fact, we know that from Mike Macdonald talking about Nick earlier this week, that he expects them to play. They're just going to monitor them in practice. They've got a plan. They're just going to keep it day to day for now. But yeah, I think the Super Bowl and all of the adrenaline around that kind of takes care of some of the pain that you might be feeling.
What are the keys for both teams in your mind? Like for Seattle to come out victorious, what do they have to control?
They have to not turn the ball over, which sounds really basic and simple, but don't give the Patriots any opportunities for that. And then on the defensive side of things, limit the explosive plays. You have the top offense in creating explosive plays, which is the Patriots, and the top defense in stopping explosive plays and not allowing them in the Seahawks. Now, overall, Seattle holds the edge in explosive play differential. So we have created more explosive plays, that you get what I'm saying, right? And then the defense,
Yeah.
we're better in both categories, right? That is one of the things that Drake May excels at, is getting the ball downfield and getting those explosive yards. So defense, you got to take that away so that you don't get quick scores and you don't make it easy to get points on the board. And then I would say take care of the football. Don't give them any extra chances.
It's interesting because on one sideline, you have Mike Vrabel, who has caught touchdown passes in Super Bowls, has won Super Bowls. And then on the other sideline, with the headset, you have Mike Macdonald, second-year head coach, hasn't been in a Super Bowl. Does that inexperience benefit him in some way?
I don't know if it's the inexperience. I think what Mike Macdonald is going to be leaning on is the process. And we hear him talk about it all the time. The process is the process of evaluating game film, the process of getting ready. Yeah, you had 2 weeks to get ready for this one, and you had a couple of other kind of funky things thrown in with some media stuff and, traveling a week before the game. But for Mike, he knows what this game means. Nothing about his demeanor has indicated that he has changed or that he's doing anything differently. Mike has been phenomenal at managing game situations in really big games. There's only 2 head coaches that are also calling the defense in the NFL. It was Todd Bowles for Tampa, and it was Mike Macdonald for the Seahawks. He has never once looked overmatched. He's never looked like the game is sped up on him. He has never looked like he doesn't have an answer for what the other team is doing. So I don't anticipate that being a stumbling block. I don't know if that is a benefit, if it's not a benefit. I think he truly raises his game when he knows the level of the competition on the other side. Great respect for Mike Vrabel, right? Knows what kind of a play caller he is, knows what kind of a defense they play with, knows that Josh McDaniels is going to call some awesome, plays and try to keep you on your toes. That's where Mike Macdonald excels and thrives, is really just matching wits across the field. So I don't know. I will be curious to see what his reaction is when I talk to him right before the game, but I think he's probably going to be just the same old Mike getting ready for a football game.
I have a couple of just real quick kind of fun questions for you, if that's okay.
Okay.
Just first off, how awesome is it to go to Levi Stadium and see Seahawks posted all over it and the Seahawks logo painted on the field? Is there a little bit of excitement when you see that?
I think it's more of I've heard from a lot of 49ers this week who are not real happy with that whole situation. But it is kind of fun and funny, and honestly, a stadium that you feel really comfortable and familiar in, which is not necessarily true for the Patriots. So perhaps that will work to our favor on Sunday.
And then how often have you been asked by other media members, or have you heard other media members ask former Seahawks about the last time these two played in the Super Bowl? How many times have you had to relive that 1-yard play?
Yeah. Thankfully, this week, I have not had to relive it too much. It kind of helps that it was 11 years ago and that none of these guys were on that team. Now, Mike Macdonald was asked about it and what he would call in that situation. And I think he listened to about 4 questions like that and said, okay, I've answered it. We're done. Yeah. We're going to move on to that. But I have intentionally tried not to watch some of those highlights. And hopefully there will be more highlights to celebrate on Sunday, and we can get the win against the Patriots that we have been waiting for.
And then the last one, just how superstitious are you as a sports fan? Because there's all this about the Patriots made sure they wore their white uniforms because of their record in the Super Bowl. You have Seahawks fans nervous because they haven't won a Super Bowl while wearing their home uniforms before. Does that play into any of your emotions as just a huge sports fan? Or is that just crazy fans?
That's crazy. I would say I have more routines than superstitions. Like, my game day routine is generally my game day routine, regardless of what the game is, where we're playing, who the opponent is. I think it's fun to talk about some of those little storylines, and I'll probably use one of those nuggets in my post-game interviews. But yeah, I would have just really tied myself in knots over the years if I was too into the superstitions and looking for those things.
A huge thank you to Jen, as, to be honest with you guys, She is someone I've looked up to for a long time. When I was in high school, I came across her pregame and postgame recaps and previews that she did for the Seahawks, and they were fantastic. I mean, great in-depth interviews, great in-depth stats, storylines. It was fantastic. Sucked me in right away. And to be honest, it has a lot of influence of what I do with Drake. And so just to be able to have her come onto my show means a lot. Now, are my nerves lessened at all with after talking with Jen ahead of the Super Bowl? Not one bit. Am I more hyped? Yes. Yes, I am, because it feels official now. All week, it's just kind of been sitting there of like, holy cow, it's happening this weekend. Now it's sitting in your gut of like, we're 48 hours away from seeing who wins this whole thing. So a huge thank you to Jen. Definitely won't be the last time we get her on the show. And a huge thank you to each and every one of you, as that will wrap up an odd week of the Media Row podcast. But thank you to you, the listener, the follower. Wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. Also wouldn't be able to do any of this without support like we get from Kelly's little nipper. That will do it for this weird week of the Media Row podcast. I'm Justin Miller signing off, getting ready to stress eat my weekend away as Super Bowl 60 kicks off on Sunday, and Monday we will have a full recap of all the great sports that happened this weekend. We will see you on Monday on the latest Media Row podcast.